Hello, in this video we will learn about the neural mechanism of feeding behavior. So the nervous system is involving for the feeding behavior during eating or fasting. So there are two forms of feeding behavior involve the hypothalamus and lower brainstem. We will understand about throughout the video. So the purpose of feeding behavior to maintain the energy balance. If the feeding behavior is not present, so the energy balance detection or identification through itself is impossible for every animal, including human. Homeostatic dependent feeding behavior is number one, which that is due to the trigger due to the energy low level in our body, while the homeostatic independent behavior mean no homeostasis is involved. For example, low blood sugar is not involved, but the stimulus through vision and hearing as well as smell. So here is the eyes smell through nose, and this is the primary stimulus, which that is the non-homeostatic, while the homeostatic dependent is due to the decrease of the blood glucose and energy as well as rise of the insulin also, because rapidly decrease the glucose will lead to more appetite. So selection of food through eyes and smell is a non-homeostatic. Feeding behavior is a series of action that includes food acquisition and the food intake into or at quality of food, taste, perception, and chewing and swallowing. So throughout the digestion, the basically in the ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and defecation will occur. Internal body factors also involve the hunger and satiety, taste of food as well as the health, mood as well as atmospheric around an individual is the basically hunger and satiety involved for these internal body factors, while the external body factors through vision as well as smell or hearing. Homeostatic independent feeding behavior is involved the emotion reward. So let's begin to understand the homeostasis independent feeding behavior. In this way, the snacking after the meal through eyes, smell, and thinking will lead to stimulate the higher brain cortex, and in this way it will trigger after the taking basically the higher brain cortex, and the thalamus is the relay information to detect what is this, and the hypothalamus is the homeostasis for hypothalamus, and the nucleus accumbens and the amygdala for emotion. The changes of the emotion will lead to regulate the hippocampus for memory conversion. For example, if you have already eat food like that, will again recall this is that. So this is the lower brainstem also involved, and this is the hippocampus will trigger through amygdala, through emotion will lead to memory conversion. Like if you have ever seen that food, so in this way you can imagine that the taste, and you can learn already about the taste and their structure, etc. If you are thinking about here thinking about that food. So the hunger, satiety, and appetite will regulate the food reward. Anyhow, the amygdala is the emotional center, and the nucleus accumbens collectively trigger the lateral hypothalamus area (LHA). Later hypothalamus area trigger after will a hypothalamus will basically trigger the sympathetic nervous system to the stomach and digestive system will lead to trigger the peristaltic contraction of gastrointestinal tract. After the peristaltic movement mean the preparation of the food digestion in the stomach as well as the digestive tract, and this peristaltic movement continuously occurs to a hunger pain. Thus, modern society, the homeostasis independent control system easily surpasses the homeostasis dependent control system. In this way, the independent control system easily dominant over the homeostatic dependent control system, which result in obesity and other diseases can cause due to this problem because the overeating and due to the eyes, hearing, and the hippocampus learning as well. So may problem like diabetes and arteriosclerosis. Let's here is the brain contain the prefrontal cortex, nucleus accumbens, and hypothalamus, as well as the area postrema, the nucleus tractus solitarius, and the acute nucleus. Internal energy balance and emotion and reward system in feeding behavior we will discuss now. So what is the process in internally? Before this, we just imagine that internal physiology change, while the homeostatic independent feeding behavior is external stimulus. So here is the arcuate nucleus, and this is the nucleus tractus solitarius. This is the different nuclei are present in the part of limbic system, which that regulate the food intake, feeling, and the homeostasis. So this is the stomach. Remember the punishment or the discussed stimuli, will, for example, pain due to tissue damage. Natural enemies are carnivores that threaten from the other host. So in this way, basically, you can understand that is also involve the human, which that will lead to inhibit the food intake. And one of the important factor that control human and animal behavior, including feeding behavior, is reward for survival. So in this way, feeling the satiety and feeling relaxation will lead to give the reward. That is the reward, the feeling relaxation, the parasympathetic nervous system activation. So remember, basically, you can think about that is the disgust stimuli will inhibit the appetite, while the pleasant stimuli will lead to increase the appetite. And in this way, when the empty stomach will produce ghrelin and glucagon like peptide 1, and the CCK will produce after the eating fat. So this is not including, but the two hormone is including ghrelin and GLP-1, the glucagon-like peptide 1. This is the endocrine hormone. While glucose when intake, for example, will lead to when decrease the glucose intake. In this way, during the fasting, lipolysis increase or decrease, but increase will lead to inhibit the hunger during fasting or eating. Leptin will produce from the adipose tissue will inhibit the hunger due to the inhibition of the ghrelin and glucagon-like peptide 1 production. Even you are in fasting or when you will eat food. So fasting will long-term fasting will lead to produce leptin. Otherwise, the short-term fasting will not produce. So in this way, it will trigger the ghrelin and the glucagon-like peptide 1 to the nucleus, acute nucleus. And in this way, for example, the negative emotion like fear to our fat, anorexia, or disgusting stimuli, which that will lead to trigger the amygdala, is the part of the limbic system, remember, and this will trigger the lateral hypothalamic area. Lateral hypothalamic area will trigger after will lead to give response. We will discuss later after the complete this understanding. So the hunger will decrease due to the negative emotion, while also the amygdala will stimulate the VTA, and VTA nuclei is basically trigger the dopaminergic neuron will nucleus accumbens, and nucleus accumbens will glutamatergic neuron will stimulate the ventromedial part of the pallidus. Ventromedial part of the pallidus will also trigger through amygdala, and the reward also stimulate the lateral hypothalamic area. Basically the same function, the positive emotion if, and reward is again stimulate when the hunger will again occur. While the nicotine will inhibit this process, the ventromedial part of pallidus will inhibit through nicotine, while the cannabis will stimulate to our eating behavior. So remember the two things is oppositely work. The nicotine will inhibit the hunger while the cannabis will stimulate our eating behavior. This is the example of any drug. It is the drug. So the bodybuilder can use the cannabis sometime for our eating to synthesis of protein for muscle growth. Anyhow, the pleasant emotion, for example, the nice and great tasty food, like like a fruit and other, which that stimulate the prefrontal orbital cortex, and through olfaction and taste, will lead to trigger the internal physiology. After this, basically, this is the external physiology, but due to the internal physiology change, when we will require, we are understanding about that. And in this way, the olfaction and taste will basically stimulate the lateral hypothalamic area. So the same things through negative emotion. The lateral hypothalamic area is the center for the hunger decrease or hunger increase. So in this way, the hunger will increase, and this hunger increase will lead to lateral hypothalamic area to stimulate. After this stimulation of the lateral hypothalamic area to activate the several pathway like thalamocortical system. Thalamocortical system will lead to give the positive or negative feedback, while the brainstem autonomic nervous system involved during the appetite will stimulate the catabolism more, as well as the parasympathetic nervous system inhibition, while the sympathetic nervous system activation. So the sympathetic nervous system will activate, and motor system. The motor system is basically the motor system means the muscles, which so the motor system activation means the able to move more muscle during the predation from the animal. So the feeding behavior will occur for finding the food in the case of different situation. So here is the Blundell et al. The 1987 give the model the satiety cascade. In this way, after the sensation, the cognition in the brain in early time will lead to post-ingestive behavior, and this behavior will lead to post-absorptive behavior in late, will again trigger the food behavior for seeking the food. So I hope you make sense about this video. This video was about the neural mechanism of feeding behavior.